The secret of my transformation was never in the outer world. It was always in the unseen realm of imagination, where all things take shape before they appear. I did not become a millionaire by working harder or by chasing after opportunities. I became a millionaire when I finally understood that my inner world was not a reflection of life, it was the creator of it. For years, I lived as though the world was something happening to me. I blamed circumstances, people, and luck. I thought wealth belonged to a chosen few, that perhaps I had to wait for the right chance or connection. But one day, a simple realization shattered that illusion. Nothing was ever happening to me, everything was happening through me. My imagination, my inner speech, myself, concept, they were the cause of everything I saw. When I first heard Neville Goddard speak of imagination as God, I resisted the idea. It felt too simple, too mystical. How could imagination, a thing so private, so invisible, hold the power to shape the outer world? But when I began to experiment, life itself proved him right. I remember one quiet night. I was tired, defeated, wondering why success seemed to dance around me but never settle in my hands. I closed my eyes and asked myself, what if everything I desire is already mine, only unseen? In that silence I imagined, not hoping, not wishing, but feeling it real. I felt what it would be like to check my account and see 7 figures there. I didn't visualize numbers, I visualized the feeling, the quiet satisfaction, the calm certainty that I am financially free. For a few moments, I lived there. In the end, I didn't force it. I just surrendered into that scene, feeling gratitude for something that had not yet appeared to my senses. And in that moment, I realized something extraordinary. The feeling of wealth was not waiting for me in the future, it existed in my imagination now. That was the moment I understood. My outer world is nothing but a mirror, reflecting back the feeling I most persistently hold within. From that night on, I made a decision. I would no longer react to appearances. I would not let the balance in my bank account dictate how I felt. Instead, I would let how I felt dictate the balance in my bank account. Every morning, before I opened my eyes, I asked myself one question: who am I now? And every morning I answered with conviction, I am a millionaire. Not as an affirmation to force reality, but as an assumption of identity. I began to move through my day from that state. When I paid a bill, I did it as a millionaire. When I spoke to others, I spoke with calm assurance, as one who has more than enough. I stopped talking about lack. I stopped identifying with struggle. You see, wealth was not something I had to attract. It was something I had to become, and I could only become it in consciousness. Neville once said, change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. I tested that truth. I stopped identifying as someone trying to become wealthy and started identifying as someone who is wealthy now. At first, the old world fought back. Bills still came. Opportunities seemed scarce. People still treated me the same way, but I reminded myself, this is just the echo of my old thoughts. It's the dying world of my past assumptions. I didn't fight appearances. I ignored them. I withdrew attention from them, knowing that attention is the currency of creation. What I feed grows, what I ignore withers. Each night before sleep, I would close my eyes and enter that sacred state between wakefulness and dreaming, the state Neville called the bridge of sleep. In that drowsy state, I imagined one simple scene. I was sitting in a beautiful place, relaxed, my phone in hand, seeing messages of congratulations, you did it. You're a millionaire. I always knew you would. I let that scene play softly, effortlessly, until I felt the thrill of accomplishment. Then I drifted to sleep. The magic did not come in a thunderclap. It came in small, natural ways. An old idea resurfaced in my mind. I acted on it, not with desperation, but with quiet confidence. Unexpected opportunities appeared, connections, projects, offers, all aligning perfectly with my assumption of wealth. Within months, my income multiplied. Within a year, I reached the exact financial freedom I had imagined. But the true miracle was not the money. The true miracle was discovering who I am. I realized I had been asleep all my life, believing myself to be a product of circumstances, when in truth I was the cause. The outer world only mirrored the inner arrangement of my beliefs. Once I rearranged my inner world, the mirror had no choice but to reflect a new picture. I discovered that every man lives in two worlds, one seen, one unseen. The unseen world is imagination, and it is far more real. Everything you can touch, taste, or see once existed only as an image in someone's mind. A building, a business, a fortune, all were conceived first in imagination. The outer world is simply imagination crystallized into form. So I began to live more deliberately in that invisible realm. When a desire arose, I no longer asked, "How will this happen?" I asked, "What would it feel like if it were already done?" That question became my golden key. What would it feel like if I had everything I desired? Not what would it look like, but feel like. That feeling became my prayer, my inner word. When I felt doubt creeping in, I reminded myself, "You are the operant power." I realized that imagination is not something that happens to us. It is something we do. To imagine is to create. To persist in an idea, to feel it real, is to give it life. When you truly accept that imagination creates reality, you are free. You no longer beg life to change, you command it through the feeling of the wish fulfilled. One day, while meditating, I asked within, "Why do some people fail, even when they know this teaching?" And the answer came softly, "Because they imagine and then doubt. They pray and then contradict the prayer with fear. They live in two minds." That struck me deeply. I realized I had done that for years. I had imagined wealth, but still talked about struggle. I had affirmed abundance, but secretly feared lack. My imagination was moving in one direction, but my feeling, my belief, was pulling in another. The law does not respond to mixed signals. It responds to certainty. So I disciplined myself. Every time a negative thought about money arose, I didn't fight it, I replaced it. I said silently, "That's not my story anymore. I am already wealthy." I stopped thinking of wealth and began thinking from wealth. That subtle shift changed everything. When you think of something, it remains separate from you, distant, unreachable. But when you think from it, you merge with it. You become it, and what you become in consciousness must eventually express itself in form. Slowly, my inner conversations changed. I no longer heard the voice of doubt whispering, "Can I really do this?" Instead, I heard the inner voice of assurance saying, "It's already done." I started to walk differently, breathe differently, and speak differently. My very energy changed, calm, confident, assured, and that vibration began to attract circumstances that matched it perfectly. Friends would ask, "What's your secret?" I'd smile and say, "I changed my mind." Because truly, that's all it takes, a change of mind, a shift in identity. I didn't change the world. I changed the way I saw myself in relation to the world. I stopped being a beggar of circumstances and became the author of my reality. One of Neville's most profound truths is this: man moves in the direction of his assumption. Whatever you assume to be true, even if it seems false to the senses, will eventually solidify in your world. The key is persistence. When I was in the midst of change, there were moments of doubt, but I learned that the test of faith is persistence in the unseen. When nothing seems to move, that's when faith must stand strongest. I reminded myself daily, imagination creates reality, not sometimes, always. When I looked back, I saw the thread of imagination running through every turning point in my life. Every success, every transformation began as an inner assumption that I held long enough to harden into fact. The millionaire version of me didn't come from effort, it came from identity. I didn't have to become wealthy. I had to remember that I already was in consciousness. The moment I claimed it inwardly, life rearranged itself outwardly to prove me right. The truth is, the inner world is the only world that truly exists. The outer world is just a reflection, a shadow cast by imagination. If you wish to change the shadow, you must not fight it. You must change the light within. When I embraced this truth fully, I found peace. Money became effortless. Ideas flowed naturally. People appeared at the right time. Opportunities aligned. It was as though life itself conspired to keep proving my inner conviction true. I remember the exact day it felt complete. I woke up one morning, checked my account, and saw the number that once seemed impossible. But there was no shock, no disbelief. It felt natural, inevitable, because I had already lived it 1,000 times in imagination. That's when I understood what Neville meant when he said, "Feeling is the secret." To feel something real before it appears, that is true faith. The world calls it delusion. The wise call it creation. Now, when people ask me how to become a millionaire, I tell them this: stop chasing money, chase consciousness. Because wealth is not a sum, it's a state. A poor man with a wealthy state of consciousness will soon manifest wealth. A rich man with a poor state of consciousness will soon lose it. You must occupy the state of wealth now, not tomorrow, not when your conditions change now. The moment you assume it, you begin to magnetize circumstances to match that assumption. And if you persist, the invisible will become visible. Every man lives in a self-created world. If you want to know your dominant state, look around. Your life always tells you what you are assuming about yourself. But the good news is, you can always assume differently. If you can imagine it, you can have it. If you can feel it real, it must come. The law of consciousness is absolute. So I invite you now to test it for yourself. Close your eyes tonight and dare to feel yourself as the one you wish to be. Don't analyze, don't struggle. Simply assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and fall asleep in that state. Do not look for evidence tomorrow. Simply persist in the inner knowing that what you felt is already done, and soon you will see the outer world bend to your assumption, because your imagination is not fiction, it's creation. My wealth was never a result of effort. It was the inevitable consequence of inner conviction. Once I changed my inner conversations, the outer conversations changed with them. Once I believed I was a millionaire, the world began treating me like one. This is the greatest discovery of life, that reality is not fixed. It bends to the image you hold of yourself. You are not a victim of the world. You are the cause of it. Everything you seek, love, success, abundance, already exists in potential form within you. Bring it forth through imagination, and it will harden into fact. So today, I no longer look outward for signs. I look inward for truth, for the inner world is the workshop of creation. If you change yourself, concept, you change everything. The millionaire you are seeking is not out there. He or she is waiting within you, ready to be assumed, ready to be felt, ready to be expressed. Your inner world holds the blueprint of your destiny. When you master it, life becomes effortless. When you align imagination with faith, the unseen becomes seen, the impossible becomes normal. That is how my inner world turned me into a millionaire. Not by luck, not by chance, but by law, the law of consciousness. I am living proof that what you imagine and persist in feeling must come to pass. For imagination, sustained with feeling, is the creative act of God Himself. So dare to believe in the reality of your inner world. Alive there until it feels more natural than the outer. Because the moment it does, the outer must conform. You are not small, you are not powerless, you are the dreamer dreaming this life. Dream wisely, dream richly, and never again doubt the power that lives within you. For when you awaken to that power, when you truly know that your imagination creates reality, you will understand as I do now. Your inner world is the treasure house of all miracles. It is the birthplace of wealth. It is the secret place of the Most High, where everything you desire already exists. And when you live there in the unseen, in the felt reality of your wish fulfilled, the outer world will simply bow and say, "Welcome, millionaire." The deeper I went into this truth, the more I understood that the world outside of me was not solid at all. It only seemed solid because I kept believing it to be. It was nothing but consciousness frozen into form. Every wall, every object, every circumstance was thought made visible. Once I grasped that, fear began to dissolve. If my world was just my imagination projected outward, then there was nothing to fear, nothing to resist, only to revise. When something appeared that I did not like, a bill, a delay, a disappointment, I did not sink into despair anymore. I smiled and said to myself, "Ah, this is only my old self speaking back to me. This is my past imagination catching up." Then I would close my eyes and revise the scene. I would imagine the letter saying "paid in full." I would hear someone saying everything worked out perfectly. I would not fight reality. I would rewrite it in imagination, and soon that revision would take shape. This became my way of life, to live as though the inner world was the only reality. People around me thought I was strange. They said, "You can't just imagine money and expect it to come." But I smiled, for I knew the secret. You don't imagine money. You imagine being the kind of person to whom money naturally flows. The state itself attracts the form. I began to understand that wealth is not a number, it is a vibration, a consciousness, a feeling of fullness. The poor man feels emptiness even when he has enough. The rich man feels abundance even before he has anything to show. It is this feeling of having that opens the door, so I cultivated that feeling. I walked through streets I could not yet afford to live in and said to myself, "This is my neighborhood." I looked at beautiful houses and said, "This is my home." I didn't say it with longing, but with ownership in consciousness. I trained my mind to feel the thrill of possession before any evidence appeared, and life, ever obedient to imagination, began to rearrange itself in accordance with that inner claim. You cannot outthink the law of consciousness. It works for all the aware and the unaware, just as gravity does not discriminate. The difference is, the conscious creator uses it deliberately, while the unconscious creator suffers by default. I had been an unconscious creator, once imagining fears, lack, and failure, and the world mirrored that perfectly. But when I became a conscious creator, when I directed my inner imagery and emotion intentionally, the same law that once enslaved me became my servant. It is not about effort, it is about assumption. I assumed I was a millionaire until the world had no choice but to conform. When the assumption becomes natural, it becomes fact. I recall a period when I was still struggling to hold that feeling. Old habits of worry would creep in. I would look at my bank balance and think, but it's still not there. Then I realized something profound. The moment I say, "It's not there," I affirm lack. The outer reflection is delayed, but my feeling now is the seed. If I keep planting the seed of lack, how can the harvest be abundance? So I stopped reacting to appearances. I said to myself, "My senses lie. They show me the shadow of what was, not the reality of what is." My reality was in imagination, and in imagination I already had it all. I would go to sleep in that conviction. I would wake in that conviction. Soon, the conviction hardened into the world. Neville once said, "You must dare to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and persist in that assumption, though the whole world denies it." I did. And the world, which once denied it, eventually confirmed it. I understood now why Neville called imagination God, because God is the creative power within man. It is the unseen reality that shapes all that is seen. To deny imagination is to deny God's power at work in you. To worship anything outside of you is to give away your creative authority. So I stopped asking the outer world to change. I stopped pleading with life. I went within, for within me lay the secret chamber, the holy of holies, where the unseen becomes seen. There, in silence, I assumed the feeling of already being who I desired to be. And when I rose from that inner state, I carried its fragrance into the world. Everything began to respond to that fragrance. Strangers treated me with new respect. Invitations came from unexpected places. Ideas flowed effortlessly. It was as if the universe had been waiting for my permission. But it wasn't the universe changing, it was me. The outer was only mirroring the new man I had become. The world you see is nothing more than the self you imagine. Change the self, and the world cannot help but change. This is not philosophy, this is law. I remember one afternoon sitting quietly, realizing that I had not yet received a payment I was expecting. My old self would have worried, but instead I closed my eyes and heard the inner conversation that I wished to hear someone on the phone saying, "The money has arrived, everything is cleared." I heard it, felt it, and accepted it as real. I did nothing more. Within hours, the call came. The payment was not only received, but exceeded. That was when I laughed aloud and said to myself, there is no delay in consciousness. The outer world simply needed time to catch up. This law of imagination works through feeling, not through effort. The more I tried to make things happen, the slower they came. But the moment I relaxed into the assumption, it flowed effortlessly. That's when I learned the beauty of surrender, not surrender to circumstances, but surrender to the reality of imagination. Every time I imagined something as real and persisted in that feeling, the universe rearranged itself to make it so. It did not matter how impossible it looked. Imagination has no limits. The laws of the physical world are subordinate to it. What we call miracles are simply natural results of sustained imagination. I began to test this power in every area of my life, not just money. I imagined peace and found conflicts resolving themselves. I imagined love and found harmony where there was once distance. I imagined health and felt energy return to my body. It became clear to me the outer world is only a mirror showing the mood of the inner man, so I became the guardian of my mood. I refused to dwell in fear, anger, or doubt, for I knew those feelings would reproduce themselves in my world. I chose deliberately to dwell in joy, gratitude, and assurance. Each time I did, my reality responded accordingly. When people asked, "How did you become a millionaire?" I wanted to tell them that the question itself is backward. It is not how, it is who. The how is mechanical, the who is creative. The moment you become the person in consciousness, the how unfolds naturally. Life finds ways you could never plan. In my own case, opportunities appeared so naturally that if I had not been aware of the law, I might have thought it was coincidence. But there is no coincidence in the world of consciousness, only correspondence. Everything corresponds to the assumption held within. When I was broke, I imagined wealth and life showed me more lack, because deep down I was still imagining trying to become wealthy. Trying is lack in disguise. When I stopped trying and started being, everything changed. To imagine successfully, you must drop the idea of becoming. You must move into the state of already being. It feels subtle, but it is the difference between night and day. So I began to train my imagination like a musician trains his instrument. Each morning I entered the silence, breathed deeply, and felt myself rich not in possessions, but in consciousness. I thanked life for my abundance. I praised the unseen for its perfection. Gratitude became my key. I no longer spoke of what I didn't want. I stopped using words like struggle, problem, or hard. Every word carries vibration. Every word shapes reality. So I replaced those words with ease, flow, and abundance. My vocabulary changed, and so did my experience. The transformation of wealth is an inner purification. It is not about accumulating money, it is about cleansing your inner world of disbelief, doubt, and fear. When the inner vessel is pure, wealth pours in naturally. Many think money will bring them confidence. The truth is, confidence brings money. When you feel secure within, you radiate an energy that magnetizes abundance. Life only mirrors your self-image. I noticed that as I changed inwardly, people treated me differently. Where once I was ignored, now I was respected. Where doors were closed, they opened. Where there was indifference, there was enthusiasm. But I knew it was not they who had changed, it was my reflection of them that had. Neville taught that every person you meet is yourself pushed out. I tested that too. When someone was rude or unhelpful, I didn't blame them anymore. I revised the moment, imagining them kind and cooperative. Invariably, they changed, or new people appeared embodying the kindness I had assumed. That is how powerful imagination is. It reshapes the entire play of life. One evening I was invited to a gathering of successful people. I listened to them speak about markets, strategies, and ventures. They all had methods, but I realized something: none of their methods were the real cause. Their inner conviction was, each of them, consciously or not, believed in their success before they saw it. The man who says, "I know I will succeed," will always find a way. The man who doubts himself, even with opportunity in hand, will sabotage it, because creation begins not in the outer act but in the inner belief. When you know this, life becomes simple. You no longer chase results, you cultivate states. You no longer seek things, you assume identities. The identity you wear in consciousness becomes the script you act out in life. I wore the identity of a millionaire until it fit me perfectly. There was no pretending, no effort, only knowing. And when knowing becomes natural, the outer must yield. There were moments when I slipped, of course. Days when old fears resurfaced, whispering, "What if it doesn't last?" But I remembered that even doubt is imagination misused. So I revised the fear itself. I imagined feeling calm and secure. I replaced anxiety with assurance. The law does not judge. It gives form to whatever feeling you persist in. You can imagine failure, and it will come. You can imagine success, and it will come. The power is neutral. You decide the direction. Every fortune, every success, every healing is born in the same womb, imagination. I recall one night reading Neville's words, "The world is yourself pushed out." I closed the book and said aloud, "Then if I wish to change the world, I must change myself." That became my prayer, my purpose, my daily work. I stopped trying to manipulate people and conditions. I worked only on myself. Each time I noticed envy, I replaced it with celebration. Each time I noticed fear, I replaced it with faith. Slowly, the mirror brightened. The millionaire identity was not about money, it was about mastery. It was about realizing that I am the cause, never the effect. Once that truth sinks in, your relationship with the world changes forever. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start declaring, "What am I imagining that caused this?" And that question empowers you completely. Because if you imagined it in, you can imagine it out. This power within man is limitless, yet most live their whole lives unaware of it, slaves to appearances, reacting to shadows. But once you awaken to imagination, you hold the key to all creation. When I first told friends that I was using imagination to create wealth, they laughed. They said, "That's wishful thinking." But later, when they saw the results, when they saw the success that flowed effortlessly, they asked, "How did you do it?" And I told them, by believing it before seeing it. That is the paradox of creation. The world says, "I'll believe it when I see it." The awakened man says, "I'll see it when I believe it." Faith is not blind, it is creative sight. It is seeing with the inner eye before the outer confirms. I remember walking into my new home for the first time, and it felt like déjà vu. Because I had lived there so many nights in imagination, every corner felt familiar. I had walked those halls in the silence of my mind long before they became physical. That is the beauty of creation. Nothing surprises the conscious dreamer. Once I lived in that state, wealth no longer felt extraordinary. It was natural. I did not chase it, it flowed. Because once you are internally rich, the outer must reflect that richness. I realized that being a millionaire is not about possessions, it is about consciousness of abundance. You can take everything from a man, but if his consciousness remains abundant, he will recreate it all. Likewise, give a poor man riches, and if his consciousness remains poor, he will lose it all. The state determines the fate. I once thought wealth was about having. Now I know it's about being. Being the person for whom wealth is natural. Being the consciousness that knows no lack. The outer world is only the photograph of that state. Change the film, and the picture must change. So every morning I asked myself, what film am I using today? If it was worry, I changed it to confidence. If it was fear, I changed it to gratitude, and the day would mirror back my choice. You cannot separate life from imagination. They are one. What you call reality is imagination slowed down to visibility. So I live now as the silent dreamer, shaping life from within. Whatever I wish to see, I feel it first. And that feeling draws its likeness from the unseen into the seen. The law is perfect. It never fails. It never questions. It simply reproduces the seed you plant in feeling. And so, every day, I plant the seed of wealth, peace, and joy, knowing that the harvest is inevitable. The more I practiced living in imagination, the clearer it became that everything I once called reality was simply condensed thought. Every face, every place, every event was the echo of some inner movement of feeling that had been impressed upon consciousness and then externalized as fact. I began to see patterns, the way a single thought of gratitude would lead to a sequence of fortunate coincidences, or how one moment of fear would multiply itself until I deliberately revised it. The outer world was nothing more than a screen reflecting the pictures of my mind, and I, the dreamer, was learning how to paint deliberately. Each morning became sacred to me. Before the mind could fill itself with noise, I sat in stillness and asked, "What world will I imagine today?" I would close my eyes and let the silence expand until I could feel my own heartbeat syncing with the pulse of infinite life. In that silence, I imagined myself already living the day as I wished it to unfold, meetings going beautifully, unexpected money arriving, people smiling, my work flowing easily. I would not merely picture it, I would feel it. By the time I opened my eyes, the world already felt accomplished. And sure enough, the day would follow that inner script as though every detail had been rehearsed. I realized that creation is not about time, it is about assumption. When you assume something so fully that it feels like the present, it becomes the present. Time then bends to fit the conviction. What you call tomorrow is only the projection of today's inner state. If today I feel myself wealthy, tomorrow cannot help but reflect wealth. At first, this truth seemed almost too vast, too infinite to hold. I thought, can it truly be that all is consciousness, that nothing exists apart from the mind that perceives? But life kept confirming it through demonstration after demonstration. Every time I shifted my inner mood, my outer circumstances rearranged to match. Even things that seemed unchangeable debts, contracts, delays melted away like mist before the rising sun when I changed my assumption about them. The most astonishing change came when I stopped caring how things would happen. That was the greatest release of all. I no longer interfered with the law by demanding methods or expecting outcomes to appear through certain people. I simply imagined the end fulfilled, rested in that satisfaction, and let the unseen intelligence arrange the path. Things began to happen in ways so gentle and natural that I almost missed them. A meeting here, a message there, an inspiration whispered at the right moment, all aligning perfectly, like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. You see, imagination does not strain. It simply knows. When I imagine from the end, I am not hoping, I am remembering, because in consciousness, the wish is already fulfilled. To imagine is to remember the unseen fact. As I continued to live this way, I began to notice another truth, that wealth is not about money at all. Money is only the shadow of wealth. True wealth is a state of consciousness in which you know that everything you need is already provided. The man who feels abundant cannot help but attract abundance. The man who feels poor cannot help but attract lack, no matter how much money passes through his hands. So I practiced wealth as a feeling, not as a goal. When I walked through the market, I felt myself surrounded by abundance, fruits overflowing, fabrics shining, life teeming with plenty. I stopped counting the cost of things. Instead, I counted my blessings. I walked as one who owned the world, not in arrogance, but in the quiet knowing that everything was mine by right of consciousness. Soon I discovered that people were drawn to me differently. They sensed something in me, not boastfulness, but a calm certainty, a quiet richness of spirit. It was as though I had become a magnet for generosity and goodwill. Opportunities came not through struggle, but through alignment. When you are aligned with abundance in consciousness, the outer world must play its part and deliver it. There were moments, of course, when old fears tried to whisper again, moments when I would see a temporary setback and think, what if it all disappears? But those moments became my greatest teachers. I learned that the test of faith is not believing when all goes well, but believing when appearances contradict your assumption. When the senses shout impossible, that is when imagination must whisper louder, it is already done. During those times I would close my eyes and withdraw into the silence. I would feel again the reality of my inner world, where no bill exists, no problem, no lack. In that stillness, I would hear the reassuring voice of imagination saying, all is well. You are still the cause. I would rest in that truth until the feeling of peace returned, and invariably the outer world would adjust itself once more, confirming the peace I had found within. This is how I came to understand the difference between creation and competition. The outer world competes, imagination creates. In competition, men struggle, compare, and chase. In imagination, you rest, assume, and know. The world of competition belongs to those who believe in separation. The world of creation belongs to those who know they are one with all life. Every time I imagined abundance for another, abundance multiplied for me. Every time I blessed another's success, my own expanded. For in truth, there is no other. All are parts of the same dreamer. When I wish good for another, I am enriching the dream we share. One evening, I sat reflecting on how far I had come from scarcity to surplus, from doubt to faith, and I realized that nothing outside of me had truly changed. The banks were the same, the world economy was the same, the people were the same. The only thing that changed was my concept of myself. I had moved from the state of wanting to the state of having, from someday to now. And because consciousness is the only reality, that inner move was enough to shift the entire play. I began to see how every event in life serves only one purpose: to show us our current state of consciousness. If I encounter delay, it reflects my inner hesitation. If I encounter generosity, it reflects my inner abundance. Nothing happens randomly. Every scene, pleasant or unpleasant, is a mirror sent by imagination to reveal the mood I am living in. When I understand that, I stop blaming others and start revising myself. This practice of revision became my greatest tool. Each night, before sleep, I reviewed the day. If any event displeased me, I reimagined it the way I wished it had gone. I felt the new version as real, and I drifted to sleep in that state. By morning, the outer world had adjusted. People apologized, opportunities reopened, situations softened. It was miraculous, yet perfectly logical. Once you understand the law, every night's imagination becomes tomorrow's fact. I remember revising one specific day when a client had rejected a proposal. Instead of going to bed angry or worried, I imagined receiving a call of approval. I heard the man's voice saying, "We've decided to move forward." I fell asleep with a smile, feeling it real. The next morning, that exact call came, same words, same tone. That was when I laughed and said aloud, "Imagination is the only reality. There is no resistance in imagination, no limitation. It is infinite, effortless, and obedient. But you must learn to trust it more than you trust your senses. Your eyes will show you lack, but your imagination knows abundance. Your bank statement may say one thing, but your feeling can declare another." The moment you accept imagination as the truer reality, the outer must conform. Over time, I came to realize that even the concept of manifestation was misleading. I was never manifesting anything. I was simply revealing what already existed in consciousness. The state of wealth was always there, waiting for me to occupy it. The state of success, of love, of freedom, all pre-existent, all eternal. I was merely traveling between them by changing my feeling of being. When you understand that all states exist now, you stop chasing and start choosing. You no longer wait for things to happen. You select the state in which they already have. Like an actor changing roles, you put on a new costume of consciousness and play your part until the world mirrors it. The law is impartial. It does not favor the good or the bad, the rich or the poor. It only reflects the assumption held with feeling. That is why awareness is everything. Whatever you are aware of being, you are. I remember the moment I truly claimed the identity of wealth. It was not dramatic. It was quiet, like a gentle realization washing over me. I was walking alone, thinking about life, when suddenly the thought came, "I am not becoming wealthy, I am wealth." It felt absolute, undeniable. And from that moment, the world began to prove it in 1,000 ways. People started calling with new projects, payments arrived unexpectedly, and doors opened without effort. It was as if the whole universe had been waiting for me to speak the word "I am." Those two words, "I am," are the key to everything. Whatever follows them becomes your experience. When I said, "I am struggling," I struggled. When I said, "I am a millionaire," I became one. The words "I am" are the name of God, the creative principle within each of us. Every declaration of "I am" shapes reality. That is why I now guard my speech carefully. I refuse to misuse the sacred name by attaching it to anything unworthy. When I feel uncertain, I say, "I am secure." When I feel doubt, I say, "I am faith." When I feel lack, I say, "I am abundance." Not to convince myself, but to realign myself with truth. The outer world is the shadow, the inner world is the light. There were times when people said, "You're lucky." I smiled, knowing that luck is only the visible name of invisible faith. I had trained myself to live in the unseen long before results appeared. I had learned the art of dwelling in the end. Dwelling in the end means feeling that you already are what you wish to be. You abandon the old identity completely. You no longer say, "I will be," because that keeps it distant. You say, "I am," and that assumption becomes your home. From that dwelling, life flows naturally. The imagination needs no permission. It obeys only your feeling. When I truly felt the joy of financial freedom, life had to mirror it. The universe is a faithful servant. It only asks, "What image shall I reflect today?" So I became very deliberate about the images I impressed upon my mind. I refused to entertain thoughts of limitation. If someone spoke of failure, I silently blessed them with success in imagination. If the news spoke of crisis, I imagined peace. I refused to lend my consciousness to the creation of anything unlovely. For every thought is a seed, and the world is the garden. Slowly, life became effortless. What once required planning and struggle began to unfold with elegance. Clients appeared at the right time. Money arrived without worry. I felt guided by an unseen current that knew my desires better than I did. It was as if I had stepped into a river that carried me toward fulfillment, while all I had to do was relax and trust. One morning, as I watched the sunrise, I realized that this inner world, the world of imagination, is heaven. It is the realm of perfection, untouched by lack or time. When I dwell there consciously, heaven expresses itself on earth. That is what the ancients meant when they said, "As within, so without." I had been seeking heaven in the outer world, in money, in success, in recognition. But all along it was within me, waiting to be felt. The moment I found it within, the outer world reflected it as wealth, joy, and freedom. Now I understand that the greatest fortune is not the gold in the bank, but the gold of awareness, the knowing that I am the cause of my world. Once you know that, you are free forever. Freedom is not escape from conditions, it is mastery of them through imagination. The outer may change 1,000 times, but the inner remains the same creative power, silent, eternal, infinite. And so I continue to practice, day after day, this holy art of imagining. Each time I enter the silence, I meet the true self, the I am that creates worlds. Each time I feel the reality of my wish fulfilled, I expand the boundaries of what I once called possible. Because in truth, there is no limit to what imagination can do. It is the infinite reservoir from which all worlds arise. As I bring this journey to its resting point, I want you to feel the truth behind every word that has been spoken. You are the center of wealth itself. You were never meant to chase after money, for money was always meant to move in the direction of your awareness. When you live from the truth that your inner world is the source of all creation, the outer must bow to your inner conviction. It cannot resist you because it is not separate from you. So tonight, dare to claim that you already are what you wish to be. Not tomorrow, not after proof, but now. Walk in the feeling that you are already the millionaire you once dreamed of becoming. Feel the texture of it, the ease, the calm assurance that you need nothing because you are the source of everything. That is the secret the world keeps missing. You do not attract wealth, you awaken to it. It has always been sleeping within you, waiting for your command to rise. Let the world call you foolish for believing in imagination. For believing in the unseen, it does not matter. They mocked every visionary before they applauded them. But those who persisted in the unseen became masters of the seen. Stand firm in your unseen conviction. The invisible world within you is the womb of all miracles. Guard it, nurture it, and speak only what you desire to bloom. When you close your eyes tonight, see yourself as already possessing all that you have asked for. Speak to yourself softly, "It is done." And when doubt whispers, smile and say, I have already received. For the millionaire you wish to become is not somewhere out. There it is, the one listening within right now, quietly waiting for your permission to live. Every man becomes what he imagines himself to be. So imagine wisely, feel deeply, believe boldly, and soon the world will confirm what you have already accepted in silence, that your inner world has turned you into a millionaire. For creation is finished, and all you ever had to do was remember who you are.